Listen, I will never forget the first time somebody asked me to fetch coffee in an executive meeting, and I was actually the one presenting a strategy in that meeting. And this strategy was going to bring the company over six figures, not only just the company, but my department. And I was wearing a $400 suit. I was also carrying a briefcase that cost more than some people's rent. And I shared the strategy which also expanded customer segments across the globe. But apparently, it didn't matter much because I was a Black woman in a room full of white executives. And that exact moment, I thought I knew about leadership. Whew, I did not. I'm Geronda Wallach Spiller, and for over 10 years, maybe more, I was the only Black person in executive spaces or leadership meetings, and where decisions that would affect a bunch of people, like a lot of people, were being made. But today I want to share what that experience actually taught me about what real leadership looks like and why everything that I thought I knew was so wrong, like dead wrong. So let me paint you a picture of, I'm going to go back to my early career. I had all the credentials, at least I thought. I had my master's degree, I had really great grades, and had glowing recommendations, which I thought would help me. And I thought leadership was about being the smartest person in the room and having all the answers and commanding respect through my expertise. Whew, boy, was I wrong, dead wrong. My first week at the top tech research consulting firm, I actually walked into my first client presentation fully prepared. I researched every angle. I even anticipated every single question, and I crafted what I felt and what I knew was a brilliant strategy. And I delivered the entire presentation flawlessly. And you know what happened? The client looked directly at my white male colleague, who hadn't said a single word the whole presentation, and said, "Thank you for that excellent analysis, John." That is when I realized that traditional leadership roles don't apply when you're the only one. So I want to walk you through some lessons here. Lesson one, the first lesson. Real leadership is not at all about commanding attention. It's exactly the opposite. It's about creating space for other people. So when you're the only one, you quickly learn that demanding to be heard actually doesn't work. You have to be really strategic about it. So you have to create allies and you have to make other people successful in a way so that they're going to advocate for you. So I started what I called strategic amplification. And instead of just presenting my ideas, I would actually share them with my colleagues beforehand because I wanted to get their input. And when I presented all the input and my ideas, I said it was our ideas. But then suddenly the same ideas that were being ignored when they came from me alone were being celebrated. And this got me reflecting. At first, I was really frustrated because why should I have to share credit for my own ideas? But then I realized something profound. It wasn't about diminishing my leadership. This was actually about expanding it because real leaders don't just succeed themselves. They have to create conditions for everyone to succeed. Lesson two. Your greatest weakness can become your greatest strength. Maybe you've heard that before. But it honestly rings true. Being the only one felt like a big disadvantage for so many years. I was hyper visible when things went really wrong and invisible when credit was given. And I had to work twice as hard just to prove myself. And even then, my competence was constantly questioned. But here's what I discovered. That experience gave me superpowers and that other leaders did not have. I could read a room in 0.3 seconds. I knew exactly when somebody was uncomfortable or when they disagreed but weren't speaking up, when they felt excluded from a conversation and didn't know how to jump in. I developed something that I call inclusion radar. So while other leaders were focused on their own performance, I was unconsciously creating psychologically safe spaces for everyone. I was asking the quiet person for their opinion. I was actually making sure that credit went to the right people. It became really important to me that I was building bridges between two different perspectives. And you know what actually happened? My team started outperforming so many other teams, and I wasn't even the manager on the team. And it's not because I was the smartest person in the room. It was just because I made everyone else smarter. Lesson 3, authentic leadership requires showing up as your whole self, even when it's scary as hell. For years, I tried to fit in. I actually would code switch constantly. And I made myself so much smaller and quieter and more palatable because I thought that's what leadership looked like, that I had to diminish myself. But man, I was exhausted. And worse, I wasn't even being effective. And when you're spreading all of your energy, trying to be somebody else, you can't access your real strength. And the turning point came during a crisis situation. One of our biggest clients was about to walk away, and there were traditional approaches that we took that just weren't working. And in that moment, I stopped trying to sound like everybody else, and I was like, I'm just going to speak authentically about my experience. So I talked about resilience in a way that only somebody who had been the only one could. I also shared my perspective that came from navigating just multiple worlds. I also just brought in solutions that nobody else in that room could have conceived. We saved the client. But more importantly, I saved myself because I realized that my difference wasn't something that I had to hide. It was actually my competitive advantage. And it took me a really long time to figure that out. So here's what being the only really taught me about leadership. Leadership is not at all about being perfect. It's not even about, trying to get everything right. It's about being authentic. It's not about having all the answers. It's about asking better questions. And it sure as hell is not about commanding respect. It's about belonging and creating that belonging. It's definitely not about fitting in. It's about making space for everybody to stand out. So today, when I work with leaders, I don't teach them how to be the only one. I teach them how to ensure no one ever has to be. If you're a leader who wants to create workplaces where everyone can show up authentically, as much as they possibly can, and if they choose to, and thrive, I've got resources for you. A couple resources. Check out the link in my description for my free belonging assessment. It's actually going to help you identify ways that you can create those spaces where everyone can thrive, and how you can actually leverage this for maximum impact. And also, if this story resonates with you and jives well, please hit the subscribe button, because every week I share leadership insights that you won't hear anywhere else because they come from a perspective that's often missed from traditional leadership conversations. Be brave and drop a comment and tell me, what has being different taught you about leadership? I read every single comment, and your story actually might inspire the next video, which is also pretty cool. So remember, please, please, please take away and remember, your difference is not your disadvantage. It is your superpower. The question is, and the question I want you to reflect on is, are you ready to use it? Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one.